anybody who was trying to have like a meaningful life change, like a habitual thing, like a diet or I don't know, like drinking less or exercising or anything, like now is the time to seize that opportunity. Don't just get into a rut of, well, I'm just going to watch Netflix all day. Like this is actually, everyone's life has been completely upended. So this is the time to like think back to when you wanted to change something, and it's likely to be changing whether you want it to or not. But you know, if you ate out constantly, you're probably not going to do that anymore. So like really embrace that. And if you do get a hold of food, like make it healthy, you know, I don't know. I've just noticed maybe it's stress, but like I was dieting seriously for like a year, like last year mostly. And then I eased up a bunch because I was exactly where I wanted to be. And now I'm like drastically losing weight this whole last week without even trying.
I feel like your face even looks different from last time we hung out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It does look leaner.
Yeah. Well, I'm realizing like it's super easy when I don't like, I know at least in the US, they're keeping takeout and delivery of food is like an essential service. So restaurants can do that. Those are up and running. But I don't know about you, but the last thing I want is a delivery person, as clean as they may be or make an effort to be. Like, I just don't want any food that hasn't been handled by me right now. Maybe I'm being a little too overcautious or paranoid, but it's just like, I'm just going to the grocery store and I don't even feel like I'm eating less, but I guess the quality of food overall is just a little bit better since I'm cooking, I'm grilling at home on the grill, and like, you know, all those things that I always say I should do anyway, or wish I had time for. Now I do for the next.
I am so torn.
Future.
Because I feel like going to the grocery store, that's where all the people are going to be if they're going to be anywhere.
So that, I think that's highly dependent on where you live. And we happen to be in an area, we live in the suburbs that our groceries, for whatever reason, it's like a local grocery store. It's not a big name brand like a Walmart or anything like that. And I suppose that's one reason, or who knows? I just got back from there, and yeah, I washed my hands with alcohol and immediately took a shower and all sorts of other things. But the grocery store experience itself wasn't crowded. I mean, there were some things cleaned out, mostly like the prepackaged deli meats. And other than that, it was like totally normal.
See, I'm finding, I don't know if it's more chill here. I mean, everyone is taking it very seriously. I feel like, especially in the last week, I know it's been all over the news and things are evolving quickly. In the last week, people are definitely taking it a lot more seriously here, but I still feel like I don't see and I don't feel a lot of panic. I see and I feel a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And we all understand why that is, but it hasn't been like a big panicking feeling here. I feel like I was actually on calls all week, call after call, with so many creatives, like whether they're creatives that are working with us or just otherwise, and they're like maybe looking for some help and someone to help support them or brainstorm what to do next. But I would say all of the creatives I spoke to all had this feeling of like what you're talking about at the beginning, like I'm going to take this time to really think about what I want to be doing in my business. Like, is it going in the direction I do want it to go? Am I doing it with purpose? Or is it just kind of going on without me? Because I feel like in this industry, you can become successful and be booking, and it can evolve very quickly, just naturally. But it can get away on you. And like, is it going in the direction that I want it to be going? Or am I directing it? Or am I following where the bookings are coming from?
Yeah, totally. I
feel like, yeah, pretty much all of them said the same thing, where they're like reevaluating everything, where they're at, where did they want to be going? Are they approaching it how they want to? But they mostly said that they're afraid of other people versus the virus itself, that they're afraid of other people panicking, and they're afraid of reactions. And I have one that's in California, and she's saying that amount of people that are purchasing guns and talking about looting, or that they're afraid of looting, and carrying a gun if you can. And like,
well, I was thinking about that today on my run. I was like, I don't want to go out and buy a gun, but I think this is such a it feels like you're in a movie almost, and it doesn't feel like it could ever happen. And so what else could happen in life that has that feeling? And, you know, every movie I've ever seen where it's like a disaster movie other than Contagion or whatever, you know, guns come in handy at some point. Now that's completely detached from reality because, you know, anybody, I would imagine the vast majority of people that even owned a gun wouldn't have the, sense or practice or anything to even use it in a serious way. Yeah. But, you know, and the other thing is we're getting all these reactions mixed in with he said, she said, who said, what said, like all of these different things. And yeah, like who knows the state of things? I feel like, you know, it's a slow burn. Like the anxiety is off the charts for everybody because nobody knows what to expect. But that also means that nobody is like literally panicking in a way that like, oh my God, the world's ending, every person for themselves.
Here's like, the thing I feel about anxiety. And I mean, I have a certain amount of anxiety. I feel like most creatives do have some kind of anxiety. We all have something. But I feel like in a case like this is that we're freaking out about the possibility of something that like, yeah, it's happening, but what you're freaking out about hasn't even happened yet. So whether it happens or not, you're already feeling these things and like the stress and emotion, and it may be completely unnecessary. And just like hurting yourself twice. So not only may it happen, but you're hurting yourself before the thing even happens. So you will feel it twice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm not a person at all that's ever had a panic attack. I think anytime I've been faced with any type of, you know, common thing that makes somebody feel like cliche anxious, like public speaking or anything like that. I've never really felt it, but maybe like 4 days ago, I just found myself, you know, I was just in the constant Reddit flicking of all the news everywhere. And I slowly realized like I have a massive headache. And then I was just laying there sad. And I think I was just feeling anxiety, like really feeling it and knowing it for one of the first times in my entire life, which was bizarre to me because I was like, holy crap, if this is happening to me, then it's happening to probably a lot more people that have, you know, hopefully maybe experienced it in a way that they have the proper tools to deal with it. But I don't because I've never had, but thankfully it wasn't, like I said, a full on panic attack or anything like that. But, you know, I gave myself space to just kind of feel that way. And then, you know, I've been getting as much sleep as I possibly can. I have this tool called it's not a tool. It's literally a box called the K-Safe that I'm so glad I own. It's actually meant more for maybe, like sweets or candies or something if you're like trying to not eat them as much. It's meant to be like put in the kitchen, but you can use it for all kinds of purposes. I don't know if we talked about it the last time, but you put your phone in it and it locks. You set it for however long, 1 minute to like however many days that you want it to lock. You push a button and there is no unlocking it. There is no pin override. You can't take the batteries out and unlock it. Like it is locked no matter what, unless you take a drill to the hard plastic. I mean, it is very, very hard. So yeah, I've been forcing myself to just detach, you know, give myself space to feel bad, detach, and then get as much sleep as you possibly can, because that really is the first thing that's going to start to evaporate. Like you just have trouble sleeping when you're feeling anxious or when stress is occurring in your life. And that's like one of your most critical basic needs is getting lots of sleep. And not having your phone next to you or easily is a really good way to mitigate the loss of sleep. And so by the next morning, I woke up and I did something I've always kind of felt like I should do, but never did. I went back about 1.5 years in my iMessage conversations of, you know, old college friends I hadn't talked to in that long. Just basically anybody that wasn't a random number, like anybody I had as a contact in my phone. And I just said the exact same thing to everybody. How are you holding up? And within 15 minutes, I had 30 different threads of conversations going, catching up with friends, just, you know, being appreciative that I reached out at all for one, but just catching up, like literally seeing how things are going. Everybody's basically doing the same. They're just hunkered down and waiting to see what happens. And, you know, it made me feel so much better. And, you know, it made, I'm sure it made all of my, you know, as you get older, as an adult, like your relationships disconnect.
Don't say that phrase, man. Like, because I feel like we're similar ages, and I'm just like, I'm still holding on, okay?
Well, I know, but like but it's no matter what age. I mean, it happens, but it accelerates as you get older. It's hard to keep up with relationships from your past. You know, people that used to be roommates, and now like you can't even remember that guy's name that lived down the hall from you. Like, it's crazy how people disappear from your life if you don't make a proactive effort. And this is, I think, a fantastic time to, even if it's brief, just reignite that connection, let people know that you care. I just finished the first of what's probably going to be like 4 sessions of what is normally an in-person presentation. I'm doing as a live stream that is replayable if you want, but you know, I'm basically presenting over a webcam my entire current edition of my workshop.
I saw that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I think I messed up in the messaging a bit. I think a lot of people just assumed I was going to play a pre-recorded video for my workshop that I had made last year, but I'm literally representing all of it with new stuff that I'm currently, that stuff I've changed. And
what new toy are we going to get away?
Yeah, it's a lot of online tools. It's shooting stuff. Yeah, it's everything, and it's live. So if people are able to tune in real time when it's occurring, I love getting questions, because even the smallest question can turn the conversation sideways for me and bring it in a new way that I still have the answer to and I have insights on, but I didn't think to bring up in my initial plan. So the live stream is a very valuable way, or I don't know if valuable is the right word, but it's a good format for doing this kind of teaching. And again, it is replayable if people want to watch it. But that's something that wasn't even on my radar at all a week ago, and I just blinked into existence.
I think with the state of the industry, the report that you sent me, that I know it's in progress.
So,
how did you finish that? Like, I feel like the information that's going to be collected now, like then that you started, versus even coming out of this whole pandemic.
I'm actually really, really excited to have a super comprehensive data set from before all this, because next year's is going to be so telling. If there's a silver lining or an upside to this, like, that's it for me.
Have you completed the data collection from pre-COVID?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, so here's the thing. I am not a data scientist, and I'm kind of hobbling my way, the best approach to dealing. Like, I've got such a great data set. What do I do with it? What I sent you was the stylized PDF of basically just an easy way to digest the raw data in like a pie chart or a bar chart and all that various stuff. So you can kind of read that and say, okay, which of the following best describes your photography business income? Cool. So 70% of the people that replied to this said that it was their primary source of income. That's cool. Wedding photography. Yep. Yeah. Well, that's a question. One of them is like, what do you primarily shoot? Weddings, portraits, commercial. 84.9% shot weddings. 8% said portraiture. 3% said commercial. So this is heavily slanted toward the wedding industry.
So you sent out, it was a Google survey.
Yep. Google Forms.
Google Forms, and you sent it out through your network, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, anything I could touch. So it was all my patrons. I did this in last year, by the way, but I kept it down to patrons only, just to kind of feel it out and see if it, as an idea, it made sense to me. And it did, but I only had like 120 responses, and it quickly became clear I need at least like 1,000 to have like a meaningful set of conclusions I could draw. So this report, all the data that you're seeing here is, yes, my patrons, all social media, telling all those people to share it with their people. Like, it's cast pretty far and wide. I mean, still the majority, I did ask for location this time. The majority of people were still in the US, but I got maybe 400 replies outside of the US, like worldwide.
I looked through it, and with the thought in mind that it's probably based on like your network and as far as that reaches, which is quite far, but it's still from people that maybe are connected with you or know you and know your work. And I thought it was interesting with that in mind. Kind of, I was looking at gear. I was looking at how long they've been in the industry. I was looking at, and then a little bit sad by how long, the percentage of how many people have been in the industry versus what their average wedding price was.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
that's the thing. So that's where I'm still, this is why it's so time consuming, is the verses, like where you cut the data. You have to start figuring out what insights you want to emphasize, like where, if it's meaningful to look at male versus female, okay, if you're female, what percentage are you shooting elopements versus weddings? And if you're male, like, is there an interesting story in that?
And I think also where you're pulling your data from. Like
Yeah.
I would love if you were to take this and even expand it further by having other people maybe in different areas of the States, or maybe like someone like Kirk Maston was on our PepperCast. Awesome
Yeah.
guy. Like his network maybe is like different than your network. And I would, or even maybe like a new photographer that's super influential. Like I wonder the people that will respond to her or him, how long they've been in the industry based on who they're following. Cause I feel
That's my hope. Yeah. I would love to get, 50,000 people. The more, the better. And you're exactly right. It is mostly comprised. And you can see that reflected in some of the data, like how are you furthering your education? Patreon is 35%. It's like, well, of course it is, because a lot of these people are my patrons. So you have to account for that bias in some of the data for sure. But that's the thing. I want to make this an annual thing. And, I started with 120 respondents. Now I've got about literally 1,200 for this one.
Amazing.
Maybe next year I can get 12,000, because this one will be taken even more seriously and have an even wider net cast.
Especially now after everything. Like I feel like seeing this and knowing that you're going to take it again, like next year, I feel like more people will be even more invested in knowing what this information is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And
what
honestly,
is the state of our industry?
That makes me realize I need to make a mental note to whenever I publish the final report, my vision for what the final thing is going to look like is the PDF I sent you here. Yeah. And then also the raw data in a Excel spreadsheet. That is pretty overwhelming to try and what do I do with this? But I want to also publish a tutorial breaking down how to start drawing your own conclusions in the data, like a 5-minute thing. It's not a big deal. If you're a photographer sitting there with an abundance of time, which I hope to have this published in the next couple of weeks, you can watch my tutorial explaining that and then start to draw your own conclusions.
It still blows my mind. I don't know, maybe if you have more insight, but the average length of time someone's been in the industry and the amount that they're charging for their weddings, that did make me really sad. I'd love to hear what you think about that, or if there's any extra information on digging.
Well, let me pull up so here it is. What was your average wedding day package price? So the total trend across all locations of where you live does peak by 30%. The 30% peak does happen between the 2,000 and 3,000 range, which is a little depressing. But if you start looking at where all these yellow boxes kind of congregate, in the US, west to northeast, all these regions in the US, you can see the average trend is actually much more saturated in the $3,000 to $4,000 range. And if you want to break out specific regions, like the peak for Northeast is, all of them really seem to peak right around the $3,000 to $4,000 range, versus Europe, or I do not live in the US, 12%. So there's a huge disparity between all of everybody in the US versus the rest of the world. So that 12% is really bringing down. You can see I do not live in the US, and the average definitely peaks between the 1,000 and 3,000 range, so closer to 2,000 as the average. And you can also look at how long have you been a professional and how those trend lines. Let's see, the people. The longer you shoot, the more expensive you generally get to be. Nobody shooting 0 to 3 years is charging over $4,000, except for 5 people that responded. Just 3% of people are saying they charge more than $4,000 if they've been shooting 0 to 3 years. So that's really interesting. Versus, 30% if you're into the 4 or 5 to 10 year range, you're still close. I mean, it's still kind of a bummer, but it's the way it is. And I got 2 people that responded that said they don't want to answer. Let's see, the $7,000+. I got 16 people responding to that, 7% of the results.
Interesting.
They've been shooting longer than 11 or 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
They charge on average more than $7,000. So it definitely trends in the right direction, but it's the hump, the saturation of data is a little bit.
And with that in mind, you think maybe people are charging less because there are so many photographers now in our industry. I know this is like, everyone talks about it, all that stuff. Everyone always has talked about it, but maybe even more so now. But then the question where it said, I forget the exact wording, but like, how are you feeling about your business going forward? Like 2021.
Optimistic.
Yeah. And it was optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is great. One thing I think you can't forget is around 2010, almost everybody, and we can see it in the data, at least for the current year, everybody includes all the high-res files. When including all the high-res files became like the standard, everybody does this, a lot was given up. So let's see, 91% of respondents said they include it. When that started happening, a lot of money on the back end was given up, I think. Many photographers in the 90s and 2000s, before the digital revolution really took hold, would not include all the files because they could have a base price for booking the wedding, and then they would make money on prints and digital sales, if at all, later on, because they withheld that for later on. And it's easier to extract money from clients. I hate to call it extraction, but when they're separated from that initial booking fee, if they paid thousands of dollars to bring you in, and then you deliver the gallery and like a small finite set just through the album, or maybe 50 favorites, and then you said, you can have them all, sure, but it's going to cost you $1 per image or whatever, which there was a period of time that was like the standard practice, especially the film days. You could make a ton of money a lot easier, months after the wedding.
What did you think before COVID, and what do you think now? Is it different?
I think that if you can make it through, if you can avoid having to go move for one, or go getting a job or going back to school, and you can keep your calendar and availability open enough, I could see, now you're going to have, some people will cancel, yes, but I think the vast majority will postpone and want to reschedule and still get married with their original vision of their day. And I don't know about for videographers. I do feel like if everyone's budget across the board is constrained, I fear for videographers and photo booth owners because they tend to be the add-on after photography.
Except for, I'm still shooting a few weddings. Like I shouldn't be because I'm so busy with Pepper, but I still fucking love them. Like, they're still such a great day, and like the energy is good, and like the best couples, like it's ridiculous. So I said yes to a few, and I have one that she specifically now, she's losing all the other things that she wanted for her wedding. They are going to go through with it, but they're not going to be able to do what they want. They just want to like have a small one. So it's even more important now to have amazing images. And they want to add videography because now most people won't be able to come.
That makes sense. I love that. Yeah. If the budget allows for, if they can cut their catering budget back because their wedding's half the size, that makes sense. Yeah. I'm not saying for sure it's going to play out that videographers are getting the axe, but at the end of the day, the people that are there, the dates that people want their wedding, the vast majority of the time, it's a Saturday. So now we have a very constrained set of dates available where it's nice weather and it's a Saturday, and
get married on a weekday.
Exactly. Awesome. I would love that. But venues, are only going to be but so flexible. It's really on the venues to be what they want to decide. So you have a scarcity, and with that comes demand. So we may see, if you can get through this point, this fall and into next year, just a ton of demand spike where there's not enough photographers to even satisfy how many clients want to get married, given the now saturated, everybody jumping for these dates like right now. Like my fall, I've got like 6 double headers now because people have rescheduled from spring to that. And it's like, holy crap, this is insane.
You know what I also was thinking? Because now you're probably going to need second shooters, third shooter, whatever, like all the hell, because you're going to be exhausted. You're like I know I can get what I can get, but I'm also going to be exhausted. Like, it's even more important to have a second shooter. You could charge someone to have a mentorship with you that's on the job learning. So instead of paying to have a second shooter, why don't you like, hey, come along, make a little bit extra money. You're like, you can pay me and you can use these images for your own personal portfolio.
So the messaging on that has to be really delicate, because I've seen some photographers do that and it blows up in their face, where photography, how can you say, value your work and charge for your work, but then have your second shooter who's working for you pay to come work for you, right? So you really have to be delicate and really carve out space as you're shooting, or maybe the next day, to like sit down and deconstruct and really give like a...
Yes, I do agree with that.
It could work if you have that agreement in place via whatever means, just like putting it on your website, like, hey, this is offering, or a Patreon tier or whatever. And you only bring them to second shoot when the client hasn't actually paid for a second shooter. Because then it's a bonus for the client. They're like, oh my God, thank you, free extra photos. But there's no layer of expectation that they're going to deliver anything. And if the photographer that paid to come wants to give you their images as just a thank you or a bonus for the client, then that's fine. These are my
top 10. They're awesome.
Yeah. I could see that framing being kind of the sweet spot of, they're paying you to be there, but you're not actually making money on them as the primary shooter because there wasn't a second photographer hired. Yeah. At the end of the day though, there's a ton of opportunity to kind of creatively, like now more than ever, I think a light has been shown on self-employed entrepreneurs, right? Like, you need to diversify your revenue streams. If you have one giant primary source of revenue, that's a real vulnerability that it may last you for a certain amount of time, but at some point you need to start having an avenue to take on second shooters, having maybe some system in place to like have stock photography set up so you're gaining, passive income on stock photos. Like, all these different avenues really need to be laid out, or considered at least, so that when a disaster strikes, you're prepared to deal with it. And this, everybody's feeling, but there's a pretty likely chance that all of us at some point are going to have a disaster where you personally break your leg or break your arm, and it happens to just you. And that's an even tighter spot to be in, to say to your clients, hey, I can't come shoot for 3 months. Now you absolutely have to return all the deposit money and all that stuff. It's an even worse situation than this. And that actually happens way more often than this. So I can't just stress enough the importance of like having a diversified revenue stream. So
if you could tell someone 3 things to diversify their business and their income, and just so everyone knows, this part's not going to be cut out. My dog is actually wrestling my feet here right now. What would you tell them?
Okay. So one of the things I've always been fascinated with is the fact that you as a photographer on a wedding day are doing 8+ generally straight hours of work. You as a photographer are creating thousands and thousands and thousands. Like, it's such high volume work. There's value in that, whether it's being able to have really interesting insights to, each photo as you're going along or whatever. Like, there's stuff that you can do well beyond just, here are all the client images. Okay, done. Like, there's so many opportunities. For me, it's naturally morphed into Patreon. Now, everything that I've create for clients that are hiring me, clients are paying me, everything that I create with them has potential value on Patreon, teaching other photographers about some special circumstance that I problem solve my way through. Like, that's amazing, because I'm getting paid to create the stuff and I'm getting paid to talk about the stuff. Love it. There's other opportunities like that I haven't fully capitalized or even realized. For example, tons of weddings have beautiful, beautiful details. Or, if you're shooting a lot of destinations or you live in a beautiful area, there's opportunities for landscape photos that can make beautiful art prints that you could sell, or stock photos, stock photography. Many people do that full time. It's a lot. It's actually, most of the work in stock photography is organizing and categorizing by keywords so that it's easily searchable. But a lot of photos you take especially if you had it in the back of your head, could be used as stock photography. I would recommend not having people in it because it gets exponentially more complicated. You have to have people in stock photography sign a specific waiver for it normally. So not people, but other aspects of a wedding day might be great for stock photos. If you do a lot of destination weddings and you travel, again, a lot of that can be fantastic stock stuff. So there's just so much content you're making leading up.
You can repurpose.
You can repurpose. That's my point. That's just one way of looking at it. Who knows? But this is the time to get creative with it. And the more revenue streams, the better. Honestly, the certain markets are going to be better than others. Like DC has a really good sort of headshot market, or somebody has an article written about them and they need a portrait done to go along with that. So that's a good space to kind of make your presence known, even if you're just a wedding.
I think it was interesting in your brief as well about where do people get most of their where do they get most of their weddings from? And it was word of mouth. And that just goes back to so much about relationships. Because even during this time, you're making me think, like, what happens if you want to diversify your portfolio and you lost out on weddings, and now, or like you said, like everyone's rebooking to 2021, and now there's still a period of time where you've made no money because the 2020 brides are now taking your 2021 position, opportunity to make that money back or just make your regular income. But what happens if you were to say, reach out to copywriters? Like if you're writing an article and you have a client that's hiring you for copywriting, I would love to do the photography for your article. Might be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm in a group chat with some photographers all over the world. One is based in New Zealand, and she's got some relationships with more like government type, people in office and such. And she has been just pushing it the last week, trying to, she realized like governments are going to want photos of how they responded to this to hopefully make themselves look good. And has just basically been bidding over and over and over again to try and convince and sell herself to the government, the New Zealand government or whoever. She can go into super specifics, but that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, if you can be on the ground, safe about it, but like right out there shadowing a governor or a journalist or whatever, taking photos of them like in the midst of all this, that's a huge opportunity to make up for, that event you lost because the gala is postponed, right? Like it's a real thing. There's all kinds of opportunities. It's really endless.
If you were to guess what our industry is going to look like in 2021, or even 6 months, so go 6 months to a year.
I think largely the same. Just if you're considering outsourcing any part of your business, do it now because you're going to be slammed. You're going to be slammed doing more doubles, editing more weddings all at once. Like all that stuff, you need to have your systems in place and get your outsourcing. Only last year did I start outsourcing my editing. And so that takes a while to get that system in place and know the whole process of what you need to upload and what the feedback process is like. All that takes months to figure out. Do it now. Don't do it when you're busy. Just get it done. Something as simple, if you've been sitting on this, email templates, right? Just a structure to start from. Like that is going to alleviate a huge bottleneck in your time.
That's what we're doing right now. We're creating email templates for everybody.
Yeah, it's so much work up front, but it will pay off for years and years and years and years. I'm telling you, that's the best thing. And it's so tedious and it's not that fun. It's not like
automate everything you can also.
Yeah.
Have your template.
I just posted an app on my Patreon that shows you literally if you have a repetitive task with your computer, like mouse and keyboard, say, I don't know, I was running an ad, for example, to promote a free article that I was putting on Patreon just to create awareness of my Patreon. So it was a free high value article. And the ad was saying, hey, if you like this, it was a cool little video that I made. If you like this, DM me for the link and I'll send it to you because I wanted some personal interaction, some give from the person asking, and then I would reward that. Turns out I was getting like 300 DMs a day. And I was like, this is impossible. I can't sit here and do this. So there's a program that I posted on my Patreon that literally will record your exact sequence of events, mouse and keyboard strokes, So I pulled up Facebook does have an automated reply option.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a link embedded in that, it's not clickable. It doesn't show the preview. So that's a problem because everybody's like, I tried using that at first and they're like, what do I do with this? I'm like, well, I know I'm a stranger on the internet, but copy and paste this into your browser. And it's like, nobody's doing that. It needs to be clickable. So setting up this literal computer automated software, it's called a macro recording. I recorded the path of me going to my inbox, typing the web address, hitting enter, and then also typing enjoy. Like, follow me if you want more of this in the future, maybe. Click. And then I just set that on 300 or however many I had in my inbox and hit go. And so then I was on my other computer doing work while I could monitor that computer literally doing that repetitive task for me. So it's so tedious to set that kind of thing up, but it's so powerful. It was like two of me was working at once.
What do you think about ads right now?
I've never seen anybody run a particularly successful ad campaign that was trying to earn average wedding bookings over $3,000. Ads do work, but they have to be incredibly well thought through, and you have to have all of your Facebook or Google, Facebook Pixel or Google tracking code, like totally laid out and understood it in a way that you can see when things properly convert versus when they don't. And people exist that do that full time. So if you're trying to be a professional photographer, it's really tough to be able to carve out the time to do them properly yourself. So if I can name drop a particular tool that I like, I don't know what you use. It's called Ad Espresso. And they hook into the Facebook ad interface and present it in a way that's, I think, a lot more intuitive and clean. And if you do set up your own custom ad campaign, just trying your best, crossing your fingers you did it right, you can pay $20 and they'll give you a 10, 15 minute, somebody sits down and records their screen walking through your ad campaign and giving you pointers about what to adjust. I learned so much in that 10 minutes that, it blew my mind, the simple things that I was doing wrong. And it was well worth the $20. So you set up an ad campaign, and then I would recommend Ad Espresso for that exact reason.
I feel like a lot of people are not going to be spending money. So now's a really good time to even try an ad campaign, because I think the market will be less flooded and people are going to be, it's not going to be as competitive. And I think people, especially on Google, I think if you're trying to reach a new market, how many people, photographers, maybe new photographers, want to start their business, are going to be Googling education for photographers, build your business, photographers, and like all that stuff. Like probably a lot.
Yeah, how to diversify your revenue stream as a photographer.
Yes.
I feel like I need to teach a workshop on this. Someday I want to do how to do a Patreon workshop, but I don't want to, I'm still figuring it out. 3 years in and I'm still learning. So I
probably always will be, because it'll keep evolving.